IT Tala and with IT Blanchardstown. So the three sort of ITs in the Dublin region have unified together, and we're all moving up to Grange Gorman to a brand new campus.
When's that happening?
Well, some people are up there already. We were actually from Carroll Brewer Street. We were meant to be there in September, but again with the whole COVID, and it actually, the builders were held out for a while, and then I think there was an outbreak up on the building site there as well, which slowed things down a bit.
Yes.
Anyway, it looks like we'll be there in January, please God, and other people. Bit by bit, so it's exciting times.
Yes, exciting times, and exciting times around now for traditions and all that, because we're coming up to Halloween. So Barm versus Barn.
Yeah. Well, you see, the whole thing, like everything in Hiberno English, they start off with Irish.
Yes.
So the word, Barm Brack comes from Badin Brack. And Badin, it means basically a loaf, and Brack means speckled. So a Badin Brack is a speckled loaf, which means it's a loaf of bread that's sort of speckled with sort of sultanas or fruit or raisins or whatever,
Yeah.
And so that's what gives it its sort of speckled look. But then in the English, it moves to Barmbrack. There is sort of speculation as well that the Barum, from the Barmbrack in English, would have come from Barum, which is a form of leaven or raising agent that would have come from ale or from beer or whatever, and that would have been used to, as a form of yeast as such. But the thing is that sort of yeast bread was something that was associated with sort of Norman Ireland as opposed to Gaelic Ireland. In Gaelic Ireland, we sort of had flatbreads and stuff like that up until really, the idea of yeast breads were to do with towns and were to do with the built-up oven and things like that, and. But it's later on, because what we associate, the bread we really associate with Ireland is soda bread, and that doesn't really appear to around 170 years ago or so, because when bread soda comes in, and then that bread soda, the alkaline worked with the acid of the buttermilk to create a chemical rise. And
that's how it works. That's how it works.
So hold on, now you have to give you a better description now. I think she's been in with you a few times.
That's the bakery stuff. I'm interested in the names, names, because is it just a coincidence that Barine, which is an Irish word for loaf, is very similar to Barm, which is a leavening agent in English?
It's purely similar.
It's just coincidental.
Yeah. It's just a coincidence. You know what I mean? So it does get its name from the Barmbrack, or the Barmbrack gets its name from the Badin Brack, from the Irish, from the Gaelic. Hold
on, you're confusing me again. So where did the actual thing originate? Who were the first people to make this type of brack, this type of loaf?
It's hard to know, because as we were saying there, with the idea about it being a raised loaf, it being a raised loaf, you're dealing with yeast, and you're dealing with sort of Norman Ireland as such.
Okay. Right.
So it's sort of something that came in, from around the 13th century on, or 12th century, 13th century on as such, with this sort of raised loaves and that sort of stuff. I think one of the first evidence, I think somewhere down in Carlow, was the first evidence of sort of a bakery that had nothing to do with sort of the court, of the kings and stuff like that, outside of
it was yes, so ordinary people were getting their bread from this bakery as opposed to the gentry.
Yeah, but again, it would be to do with towns, because most people didn't live in towns, most people lived in the countryside, most people were sort of self-sufficient, and most people, their bread would have been sort of oat cakes and would have been sort of flat breads that would be made on the, and it's later on, as we said, with when soda came in and soda bread came in, we used to cook in bastable pots, which are these sort of ovens, that you'd have on the open fire, and you'd put the loaf in,
like a Dutch oven,
on top, and you'd put the coals on top of the lid to create the sort of Dutch oven sort of thing, the bastable pot, and you have a thing called spotted dick, or speckled loaf as well, which would be a sort of a soda bread, which would have the fruit in it.
I know it. I make it every Saturday morning.
There you go.
It's also called spotted dog.
Spotted dog, spotted dog, and I think the spotty dog, the lot of them call it, and they just call it spotty sometimes and all that. And you'll see it all over, because when I did the Blosta program, I went all over Ireland, looking at various local foods that were spotty down in up in Donegal and down in Kerry and all over. So
right. I'm just putting this to rest now. Is there any possibility whatsoever that, this is my theory, right? Badin Brack originated in Ireland. Then when it was been anglicised, people saw the iFoda N and saw an M, and it became Barmbrack. Is that?
No, but it could have. Yeah, but it could have easily been the fact also that that they, because it could have gone from a speckled loaf to a sort of a raised speckled loaf as well, and then they might have been using the barm, because when you're saying these areas of Norman control would have been areas of English control then, around the Pale and the big towns as such. And again, with the all of these people, they moved, Irish culture and Irish foodways travelled across and back, through Europe and through England. So it's nothing new. What I mean? Influence was not just coming one way. For example, there's another thing that's associated with Halloween, which is Culcannon, and which is the mashed potato and the curly kale and the whole lot in it. But Culcannon fried up the following day is known in England as sort of bubble and squeak.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
And again, that's very much an influence of Irish food going over and then finding its way into sort of the English repertoire.
I love this every year, claiming the jack-o'-lanterns. Go on, tell them the story.
It goes back to sort of really pre-Christian times, and it goes back to the hill of Tlachta. Well, I suppose what we have to remember that this, Samhain, Halloween comes from Samhain, and Samhain is one of the quarter days. So it's where the old Celtic calendar was broken into 4 quarters. So you had Imbolc, you had Baltina, you had Lunasa, and then you had Samhain. So this is the beginning of winter. And then 3 months later we get Imbolc, which is now St. Bridget's Day, which is the beginning of spring, etc. So as part of that, in the hill of Tlachta up near Slane, or up near County Meath, it's called the Hill of Ward now, they had this fire, and there was a tradition of quenching all the fires and then starting a new fire in your house, from this sacred fire. So when this fire was lit, another fire would be lit 12 miles away on the hill of Tara, etc. The hill of Ishnach, and all around the country you'd see all these bonfires on the top of the hills, and to spread the word. And people used to take an ember from the fire and bring it back to start their own fire and to bring good luck into the house.
Right.
And what they used to carry the hot ember of fire is that they used to take a turnip and hollow it out, and then put the hot ember inside it, then carry it in, and that way they didn't burn themselves as such. And then this tradition carried through as such. Sometimes they would have holes or pictures or stuff in the turnip, and you'd have the light coming through. And actually, if you go down to the Museum of Country Life in Castlebar, or just Thurlock Park in Mayo, there is a replica there of a really, really scary, you can probably see it online now on their website, a really, really scary turnip. Clodagh Doyle and all her colleagues down there in the Museum of Country Life, wonderful, wonderful place to visit. So when the Irish people actually went and emigrated to the America, they brought the tradition with them. They brought the tradition of Halloween with them, and they brought this tradition with them. But then again, you couldn't find turnips there as easy, so the thing they found was pumpkins. And then they carved them out, and that's really what became the jack-o'-lantern that we're so familiar with,
There you go. And we sort of imported it back. Our own tradition came back to us. Full circle. Dr. Martin McAnummer, thanks so much. Happy Halloween, as they say in America. There's another importation. Okay, see you, Martin. Bye. That's it from us. Cormac and Sarah on the way. We are back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and stay safe.
It's the Ray Darcy Show on RTE Radio 1.